Welcome everybody to tonight's live stream. Um, we're gonna discuss tonight cell phone service and regular telephone service. Yeah, how to keep your U.S. number. I'm gonna share my personal experience. Um, we have a couple of people here: Rick, Brandt, Blaine, Doris, Buck stops here. Welcome, Stephanie. Welcome. Um, what we're basically going to do tonight, the last live stream, I ended up talking too politically, I guess you might say. I know that everybody is worried about what's going to happen with residency, what's going to happen with different things in now that Trump is president, and also I also was talking about the current Mexican president and tariffs. I know that's a big concern for everybody, but I kind of want to get off that topic because, like I was saying the last couple of live streams, we really don't know what's going to happen until we see the actual president come into office. We will see the interactions between both countries, and we'll go from there. Um, but I really hate to start making kind of predictions of what's going to happen because I'm one of those that's very big into it's not official until it's official. So I wanted to get away from talking about that stuff. Now, if it becomes concerning, let's say tariffs do get put in place and all of that stuff, we can discuss it then. And also with I've held off on doing any kind. I might do next week. What are the possible implications for residency requirements with, of course, the new year coming in? There's going to be possible changes. There's a new immigration commissioner that just took office now in December. So we might see some changes in immigration, but at the same time, it's the same thing as before. We can't tell until it's official. But I can share my views on what I think may happen. Um, but it's going to be very hard to see what's going to happen because the political landscape is also going to have a lot to do with it. And we're going to have to just see how things are going. Now, I do know uh, we will just touch on this real quick. I do know one person went to the Seattle consulate. They had more than enough money to qualify for permanent residency. They had been retired for 7 years, and the consulate basically made them jump through 50 million hoops. They even sent them home. They had to get more documentation. They had to get references from Mexico, uh, and they finally got, I believe, temporary residency. So this may be a trend. We may start seeing it harder to obtain residency. Hey, Henry, how's it going? Uh, so let's just see what happens. I don't know. This is just one incident. Every consulate's different. I'm almost sure that there's plenty of consulate stories. I want to say horror stories or whatever you might say, but we're just going to have to see. But that's just one example of something that I've seen since this new commissioner has taken office. We'll just have to see what happens. Also, we have exterior relations. I believe it's the same person that's in charge of exterior relations, so we may not see any changes. But tonight, what I want to do is I want to depart from all of that because one of the most common questions that I see, um, hey, Anna, how's it going? One of the most common questions that I see is there's two common questions is what do I do for cell phone service in Mexico? And second question is how do I keep my US number because I still have a US bank and I still get text messages and I still need to be able to do my two-factor authentication. Um, and so I'm going to offer a couple of solutions. I'm also going to go over who the cell phone companies here are in Mexico. I think I'm going to just try to keep it simple and tell you what they have to offer as far as types of service. Everybody's case is different. I happen to be on a different plan than a lot of people are on when it comes to cell phone. My solution is a lot different and a little bit more expensive than a lot of other people's solutions. Uh, but I'm going to give you everything from the free solution of keeping your U.S. number all the way up to some type of paid solution. Um, and I'll break down the cost for me personally. Um, and but I'll kind of go over it a little bit. Um, Before we start, I want to express that there's three cell phone companies here in Mexico: Movistar, Telcel, and AT&T. Um, Basically, Telcel is part of Telmex, which is the telephone company. Also offers internet services, but it's a separate. It's just like AT&T internet and AT&T cell phone service and AT&T phone service. They're totally separate. Um, so AT&T is actually Telmex is actually Telcel. I'm sorry. Let me go back. Telcel is the first, and it's probably the largest network because it's been around the longest. It's owned by Carlos Slim. If anybody hasn't heard of Carlos Slim, he's one of the few billionaires in the world. It's owned by Carlos Slim. It's a subsidiary of Telmex, and it's probably supposedly has the best coverage here in Mexico. Um, then you have AT&T. AT&T came here a little before I got here, um, and they built out a vast network. What I've noticed is some places that AT&T works, Telmex doesn't work, and some places that Telcel doesn't work, and some places that Telcel works, AT&T doesn't work. I'll give you a perfect example. Where I live out here, hey Bruno, where I live out here, Telcel is the only one that has towers out here. Although I do have AT&T service, which I'm going to explain in a little while, but although I do have AT&T service also, um, uh, when I'm on AT&T service out here in Zirandero where I live, it actually is roaming on Telcel towers, and the data, I guess you're placed down to practically no speed at all on data. So I'm sometimes I can't even get text messages if I'm on the AT if my phone is set to AT&T. Um, so then there's Movistar. Movistar is normally in your big cities. The coverage is very spotty. If you live in a big city like Guadalajara or Mexico City or Monterrey, they have a very good network there. San Miguel, Movistar really isn't very good here. Well, it's not even sold here in San Miguel. You'll see that Movistar is not sold in a lot of places. Movistar is a major cell phone company in Latin America. A lot of Latin American countries, Colombia, Brazil, all have Movistar, but Movistar hasn't really come into Mexico that much. Now, here's the difference on the three. Um, Telcel is noted for its great coverage, probably better coverage than any of the other cell phone companies. The AT&T is second in coverage, almost catching Telcel because they're a major corporation. And the third, Movistar, is known for their unlimited data plan. In other words, they give you unlimited data for a set price. Whereas in the United States or in some other countries, we're used to unlimited. Actually, the only one I really seen is the United States. I think in Canada also, where cell phone companies give you unlimited data for actually for so much. Most countries, most Latin American countries, even when I was in Jordan, they all require or they all have a limit on your data or a cap on your data. Both AT&T, well, all three, AT&T, Movistar, and Telcel, all offer free social media. What you'll notice here, Facebook, WhatsApp, what a lot of people will do is they'll get a cell phone plan and they use WhatsApp. They even use WhatsApp to make phone calls because that won't take out of their date. Well, they use it because it's easier, but also they use WhatsApp to make video calls and phone calls. Unlike FaceTime that uses your normal data, they use the free data on WhatsApp. So WhatsApp's very popular here. And so what you basically do have is a choice between three companies. Now, another thing that I've noticed a lot of people ask is, how do I move my US phone number to a Mexican cell phone company? Okay, here's the solution. There is no solution. You cannot move your U.S. number to a Mexican cell phone company. The only way to maintain your number, there's several services. The free service is Google Voice. What you do is you before you leave the United States, because Google Voice, you have to attach it to a phone number or whatever. In order to port your number, you want to do it while you're in the United States. You sign up for a Google Voice account. You get and you port your number over to Google. I think there's a fee for porting your number over, but you port your number over to Google Voice, and then you have a US number. Now, Google Voice enables text messages. So you can get text messages and you can get your two-factor authentication through Google Voice. Other people use services such as, and there's iPhone apps and Android apps for Vonage, Magic Jack, a couple of other companies that offer voice over IP telephone service. The one thing that you need to make sure, though, is, for example, Skype. Skype has voiceover where you can get a US number and you can actually, I don't know if you can port your number, but Skype, you can make phone calls and all of that stuff. But the only problem with Skype is you can't receive text messages. So to that number. So you need to find a service. I believe Magic Jack, I believe Vonage, and I also believe Google have that. Now, I do have a Google Voice number. I was part of the beta program with Google Voice many years ago when it came out. So I kept that Google Voice number. I've always had it. I use it as a, I guess, spam phone number, might say. Or when I was in the U.S., I used to use it when I used to put something on Craigslist, so I wouldn't have to give out my cell phone number, and people could leave messages. They could text me on the Google Voice. The Google Voice does have an application, so if someone texts me on Google Voice, I can get it on my cell phone. Um, so that's one way of getting your U.S. number. Now, that's not the solution that I chose. Basically, what I did, and what many people do, is I have an iPhone. Actually, I just finished getting the 16. Okay, right here. And basically, what I do is I have U.S. cell phone service. The iPhone, if you get it from the United States, now this iPhone is an iPhone 16 Pro Max that I got here in Mexico. It still has the SIM card. But of course, it's still going to cost you more here in Mexico to buy an iPhone, and you usually have to buy it in cash. But you do have the physical SIM card slot, not like in the United States. Everything over the 14 and above in the United States does not have a physical SIM card slot. It's all what they call eSIMs. There's a rumor that Apple is eventually going to go eSIM with everything. But the reason why I got an iPhone 16 Plus Pro Max here is because of the SIM card. Now, that's not the solution. I do use the SIM card slot, not for a Mexican phone number. Hey, Michael, I don't use it just for a Mexican phone. I use it actually for travel. So basically, I have two eSIMs. Okay, I have a US eSIM. I have cell phone service with a US company, and I'm going to go into what I have. And I have a Telcel eSIM, which I get my Mexican phone number on. And what I do with those two eSIMs is those are on the phone. If we travel and I go to like Costa Rica or something, I can buy a local SIM card and put it in the SIM card slot, and I have the local SIM card. Now you can, if you have eSIM, okay, if you have an eSIM only phone, there are cell phone companies that cell phone. There's applications where you can buy data if you travel, but I just found it more. I'm from the traditional get a local SIM card when you get there. So that's what I do. What I do, yes, and it is a dumb move removing the physical SIM card. What I personally do, and actually Keith Hanna, let's put his comment up here because it's kind of what I do here. Got my Canadian number with Mexico, US, Canada coverage, 250 gigabytes, unlimited, $90 Canadian. And basically, I don't know who that's with, Keith. I think in Canada, I think there's Rogers, and then there's other I don't know the cell phone companies, but this is what you're doing, Keith, is exactly what I'm doing. I have Cricket, and I didn't get regular AT&T, and I'm going to tell you why. Because, and this is a more expensive route. I have two phones on Cricket. My wife and I. Well, tell us. Okay, tell us. Yeah, that's one of the. So what I did was I programmed a Cricket eSIM into my phone, but I've had this Cricket service since we came to Mexico. Cricket is owned by AT&T, so Cricket has unlimited in Mexico and the U.S. And also Cricket has Wi-Fi calling. So when I'm at home, I can make phone calls as if I'm in the United States. That's one thing you can't really do with Google Voice. You can do that with Magic Jack but Magic Jack's a monthly for service. Vonage is a monthly service. Hey Gina and Mark, how's it going? From Gringos or Us? Yeah, apps like Airolo, they're rip up. There, I'll tell you what, and actually, I agree and disagree with you, Mike, and we've discussed this before. They can be very convenient if you only need 3 or 4 days worth of data, or I'm just going for a week. Like when we went to Merida, I just bought, and I also have an iPad that they don't have physical SIMs anymore, so I use Airolo and actually another one called Nomad. But basically, that's what I do. I have one eSIM programmed with my Cricket number. The reason why is Cricket's a prepaid service, but it's cheaper than AT&T. Okay, now back in the United States, I will admit, when I'm back in the U.S., my data is a lot slower because you're depending on where you're at in the U.S. But in South Texas, everybody uses Cricket to the point where if you have a Cricket phone, your data slows down to a crawl. But that's because you're not prioritized. But I don't need priority because I'm only in the U.S. every once in a while. So basically, I go ahead and I have the Cricket, and then not only that, but we have two lines, and I have the unlimited data, and two lines I pay $90 for, and it's basically $90 flat. I don't pay anything more taxes or extra for my U.S. phones, but that's two U.S. phones, okay, with unlimited data. Now, here's the catch. They roam in Mexico for free. So if I want my unlimited, here's the thing. If I'm in a good area where I have AT&T, then I have access to my AT&T service. I just switch my data over to AT&T because I'm an unlimited. Here's the other catch. Whether I have AT&T or whether I have Cricket, the speed's the same here in Mexico. It's not. I'm not saying it's not deprioritized, but my experience has been that I get better service with Cricket roaming here in Mexico than I do back in the United States. So that's what I use for a U.S. phone number. I can get text messages on my iPhone. I can use Wi-Fi calling anywhere there's a Wi-Fi connection. I can make a phone call from my phone number. And also, what I also have a Mexican phone number. Why is a Mexican phone number important? If you want a bank account, usually you need a Mexican phone number because of the application, two-factor authentication, same type of thing. Most people, when we got here and said, even though there's WhatsApp, most people use WhatsApp. They'll even say, and actually, here's the other thing too. You can survive on a U.S. number. If you just say, hey, here's my phone number. I'm available on WhatsApp. People will use WhatsApp to call you. They'll use WhatsApp to text you. So technically, you could live here on a U.S. phone number. But, John Kent, Mercado Libre requires it. Banks require it, blah, blah, blah. So it's better to have a Mexican phone number. Now, what's the options do I have between Telcel, AT&T, and Movistar? Both Telcel, if you're on an American phone that only has eSIMs, only no physical SIM card slot, your only choice is going to be between Telcel and AT&T. I don't know about Movistar. Movistar didn't offer it before. Telcel didn't offer it at the beginning. AT&T was the first to offer eSIMs here in Mexico. Now you now you're down to Telcel or AT&T. So what did I do? Well, because I have AT&T roaming service, so I could get AT&T anywhere, I went with the Telcel option. But there's a catch with the Telcel option and eSIMs. Okay, the Telcel option is still an option if you have a physical SIM card. Um, the Telcel option, you have to have you have to sign up for a contract. So you have to have a postpaid account. You can't use a prepaid account. Now, AT&T with eSIMs, if you want to buy an AT&T eSIM where you go the Google Voice route and everything else, the AT&T, you can pay for a year upfront. Okay, so you pay for 2,500 pesos, 2,000 and something, depending if you're on the lowest gigabyte plan. It's 2,000 and something pesos, and you basically prepay for the whole year. And 2,000 pesos is basically $100. It's a little bit more than 100, but it's around 100 and something for the whole year. So your cell phone service here in Mexico is going to come out to around, if you go with the cheapest plan with 2 gigabytes of data a month, you're looking at about 200 pesos. What a lot of people do that have a physical SIM card or SIM slot, whether it be that they only get a Mexican number, have an eSIM and a physical, what they'll do with to get Telcel, not Telmex. Why do I keep saying Telmex? Telcel is they can buy a card at the OXXO. You can buy a card just like you buy a card anywhere else. You can even buy AT&T prepaid cards, and you just charge it at the local OXXO. OXXO is like the equivalent of 7-Eleven here. So you can have a plan, and you just prepay 200. They don't take any of your data. They don't. Not like if you sign up for a contract, you have to have your residency paperwork and everything, your card and everything. So that's basically now. And the other thing too, you quit paying it, or you don't pay it the following month. They just cut the line. They don't. If you have a postpaid plan, it's a little bit harder to cancel the plan, and also there's a lot more requirements. But what I did was I went with a postpaid plan for Telcel, and I have an eSIM from Telcel programmed into my iPhone. So I have an eSIM for Cricket, which is also AT&T, and an eSIM for Telcel. Why did I do Telcel instead of getting another AT&T phone number? Because that way, if I'm in an area that AT&T doesn't work, I use Telcel. And also, the neighborhood I live in has Telcel towers, and that's the only way I can get very good cell phone service. So I have both Telcel, and now with my particular phone, which I bought with a SIM card slot, I could technically go down to the OXXO and buy a Telcel SIM card. Now I'm a data hog, you might say. So what I did with a data hog, as being a data hog, uh, I got a 10 gigabyte plan. That's 550 pesos. So it's about $27 a month, uh, close to $30 a month, depending on the exchange rate. And that gives me 10 gigabytes of data. I've never run out. I go back and forth from Telcel or whatever if I want to play online games or something while I'm in the parking lot at a store or at the store or something like that. Then I will switch over to my AT&T, and I have uh, unlimited data. So that's basically what I do. Okay, and I have a Google Voice number too. Let's get back to some of your comments and everything. Google Fi would be worth it, especially if you stick. Actually, Michael, I've heard of that Google Fi is really good. A lot of people swear by it. The only thing that I don't like about Google Fi, or I don't know what their plans look like now, but at one time, actually, even when I was in Jordan, people said, "Hey, get a Google Fi number and use it here." When I was working in Jordan for a little while, but they seem to limit you on your data, which is the same as Mexico too. You know, you're limited by how much data you have to purchase, and then you have to buy extra data. But I like the idea of just having an unlimited plan. And I will get to T-Mobile. Someone made a comment about T-Mobile. I will get to that And I'll tell you what, I used to be a T-Mobile user in the United States, and I'll tell you my personal experience and what happened and why I switched to cricket. Um, hey, Robert from Argentina, finally made it over the Andes Mountain. We'll be in Buenos Aires soon. I'll be hiking. Awesome, Robert. Keith was getting charged $70 a day roaming charges when I was in Buenos Aires. Switched over to the new plan, and I got back to Canada, moving full time. Yep, exactly. You'll actually, Keith, you're doing the same thing I did. I kept my US number. Now, here's the other thing that I need to mention. Okay, WhatsApp. What do I do for WhatsApp? Because I have WhatsApp on my US number and I have WhatsApp on my Mexican number. And people say, "How do you do that? How do you have two instances of WhatsApp working?" Well, here's the secret to being able to use WhatsApp on both numbers. The secret is there's WhatsApp, the application WhatsApp, and there's WhatsApp for business. Okay. So what do? I have my regular WhatsApp number in the WhatsApp application. And although the WhatsApp for business is for businesses, you can make a business profile. You can do all sorts of extra things like send out spam stuff if you want to. But WhatsApp for business works exactly like WhatsApp. In other words, I have all the same features as WhatsApp. I can get when I give them my WhatsApp number. The only difference is when I receive a message on my Mexican number, it goes to WhatsApp Business. When I receive a WhatsApp message on my US number, it goes to WhatsApp, the regular WhatsApp. So that's how I get around the WhatsApp. Now, if I had to use three numbers, then I'd have an issue. But what I do when like the last time we went to Guatemala, I bought a local SIM card and just put it in the phone. And then but we had a tour guide that needed to keep communicating with us. But what I did, because I had data, I told him, just use my regular WhatsApp phone number. And he was still communicating with me on WhatsApp. So you can't have 3 or 4 instances, but you can have 2 instances of WhatsApp on your phone. Buck, I got an iPhone 14 with AT&T and it works in Mexico. All my associates in Mexico use WhatsApp for calling and texting. Even businesses use. Yep, exactly. Buck stops here. And actually, like I said, you can get by on just using your US number or Canadian number if you have an unlimited plan. And AT&T roams just fine down here. And AT&T coverage down here, like I live in San Miguel, and I live kind of like on the outskirts of San Miguel, so it's kind of, they haven't really put a lot of towers out here. I'm almost sure, I'll tell you what, there's some big residences going, not residences, but neighborhoods going up around this area. I guarantee you AT&T will eventually be out here, but it's not. So there are instances where, but AT&T is pretty well covered here, even in San Miguel de Allende. And what I noticed is even traveling most of the toll roads, I have had no problem with having on the main roads having coverage with AT&T the whole time. Jet lag, and I actually said I would get to this. Stay away from T-Mobile. They will shut you off at 90 days in Mexico. AT&T, no issues. Yes, jet lag, you are correct. And this is what happened to me, and I'm going to give you my personal experiences with T-Mobile. T-Mobile's terms of service say you can roam in Mexico for free, but it can't be more than, so I don't remember what the percentage is, but you cannot use it in a foreign country. In other words, you have to use it a majority of the time in the US. So technically, if you live in Mexico and you're not using it in the US, at 90 days, and this is over a period of a year, that's what they say in their terms of service. But what they do every 90 days is they evaluate your usage over the 90 days. I wasn't even retired yet. I decided to take a vacation in Monterrey, Mexico, and I had my T-Mobile phone. And after 30 days, actually, it wasn't even 90 days. It was after 30 days, they sent me a threatening message saying, by the way, we noticed that you're in Mexico and you've used more than your percentage, and you will be cut off at 90 days if this usage continues. I called up T-Mobile. I said, "Hey, look, I'm just in Mexico for a couple of months. I'm not I'm not living here, and this was before I moved here." And they said, "Sorry, but our terms of service are clear because we pay." And here's the deal: the reason why is they roam on Telcel. They have roaming agreements with Telcel. In other words, my Telcel phone actually roams on T-Mobile when I go back to the States. And I guess because of the roaming agreements, there's limits. So T-Mobile basically will cut you off. Now, what I do have family members that have T-Mobile. They live in Mexico, but they live in Monterrey and they travel back to the US. And I don't know what happens, but when you travel back to the US, it resets your time somehow, even if you're there for a day and then they come back. So they've never had an issue. Some people don't have an issue with T-Mobile. But I do know that if you're living here constantly, and that's when I switched to cricket. I was getting ready to retire, and I knew that we may be coming to Mexico more often. And I was like, you know what? If I'm going to come to Mexico for 3 or 4 months to spend with my in-laws, I don't want to have to worry about getting my cell phone. And when I talked to T-Mobile, their solution was just don't use your mobile data, just connect to Wi-Fi when you're there in Mexico. So it wasn't a big help. Yeah, Keith Hanna will get a SIM at OXO for government bank uses. Exactly, Keith. And you shouldn't have an issue, Keith, if you have a physical SIM card slot available, then you should be able to put that SIM card in. And I think the cheapest plan is like 200 pesos. That's $10 a month for 30 days of service. And I think it's 2 gigabytes of data. But Keith, if you have that unlimited data that roams here with TELUS, then you don't have to worry. You just keep your phone data switched over to TELUS, and you just receive your WhatsApp and your bank and all of that stuff. Uh, and the other thing too is we've noticed, even though everybody uses WhatsApp and everything else, and you can get by on a U.S. number, there are times that it's just you need a Mexican number, uh, and it doesn't matter from where. I have a Monterrey number. I don't have a number from San Miguel. We used to have a number here in San Miguel, but thinking we were going to move to Monterrey, we switched the numbers over to Monterrey, and I don't want to switch them back to San Miguel because I've already given my phone number out too many entities. So, but it also yes, Movistar of Mexico is a subsidiary of Movistar in of Spain. It's from Spain, but also it's very common here in Latin America. As a matter of fact, when I used to travel down to Colombia to do work in Colombia, Movistar used to be the company that we used to have. We used to get prepaid phone cards so we could use the mobile. We used to take a mobile phone with us and use the Movistar. I need a beer now trying to figure this out. It's very simple. Gringos are us. It's just having the equipment. That's all. So already got my beer in hand. Great, Bruno. And light up a cigar. Exactly, Mark. Rick. Already glowing, Rick. That's right. um, hey, Lambden, how's it going? Yeah, well, actually, Michael, the Sims at Oxo, like if you get a Telcel Sim, they give you a phone number actually, and you can get your day. And here's a cool thing about prepaid phone service here in Mexico too. If you have an iPad, let's say an iPad with a SIM card slot, or I don't know, they don't make them anymore with SIM. I don't know if the Mexican version comes with a SIM card slot, but if you do have a tablet with a SIM card slot, if you use in the United States, the IMEI number will actually identify your device as an iPad. And some cell phone prepaid services, if you put the card in, they'll say, you have an iPad. This phone will not work or this data won't work. Mexico doesn't put that restriction. So you can put a Telcel iPad in a mobile hotspot. I mean, a Telcel SIM card in a mobile hotspot, and it'll work just the same as it will in a phone. And it'll actually have a phone number attached to it. Anna, would using a VPN stop T-Mobile from cutting you off? No, actually, and I'm going to tell you why. And I'm going to tell you why this, and this goes into a little bit of the geeky stuff about cell phones. When you put a SIM card into your cell phone, it sets up certain settings, okay? And there's a setting in there that's called an APN setting. In some of the Android phones, well, depending on what service you use, some of the services lock the APN settings. For example, Cricket or certain phones, you can't get into the APN settings. But what happens is when you put a T-Mobile card in there, the APN is basically the identity of the internet service provider. For example, my APN for Cricket is actually in Houston, Texas. In other words, when I connect to my data, I'm connecting to Houston, Texas over the cell phone network. So when you're connecting, when you turn on your mobile data with T-Mobile, when you turn on your mobile data, it connects your data to whatever the server is in the United States. For example, when I'm on Telcel, it connects to the APN here in Mexico. So that's how they identify that you're using their service in another country, or that's how they identify that you're roaming, basically. Um, and so you'll notice that when like for example with Cricket, if I do a speed test, it'll say connected to Houston internet and the latency and everything else. So VPN won't stop you from getting disconnected. They'll know that you're connected to their roaming. And then plus when you turn the roaming on and you have to turn the roaming on in your phone settings to tell the phone company to roam on the different tower. And not only that, but T-Mobile has to connect to Telcel. So, funny, I have a Guadalajara Telcel number on a dual SIM phone 13, and I've been roaming in Seattle over a year and no issues with Telcel in the US. No, not. And actually, jet lag, I don't know. My Telcel number actually roams on uh, T-Mobile. That's the network that it roams on when I'm in the States. I haven't been anywhere else where it's roaming on anything else, but I haven't had any issue. Telcel won't shut you off. T-Mobile's the one that'll shut you off for being in Mexico too much. T-Mobile, you should be able to roam. It is roaming in Mexico. Now you are still have the data caps. So if you have 5 gigabytes and you use it up in 2 days, then you have to wait till the end of the month or buy more data. You can buy more data. You can recharge it through an app. Actually, you can do it for both postpaid and prepaid. So you shouldn't have a problem with Telcel roaming in the United States at all, and it is free in Mexico and the U.S. And the same thing applies as far as utilizing your data because it hooks up to the APN. It keeps track of the data that you're using. But the cool thing is if you use WhatsApp or whatever, you're not burning up your data if you're using social media. So that's another thing. So yeah, thanks for bringing that up, jet lag, and I totally agree with you. I haven't had an issue. I can attest to it also. And I've been in the United States. Actually, we spent several months in the United States last year, the year before last, and I had no problems getting messages, talking, blah blah blah, the whole. And here's the cool thing: Telcel also has Wi-Fi calling. So when I'm in the United States and I need to call somebody from my Mexican number, I can actually call from my Mexican number without having to worry about. And that's the neat thing about having a Mexican number. I can call Mexican 1-800 numbers. And then the other neat thing about having Cricket Wi-Fi calling is I can call US 1-800 numbers. So that's why I do what I do. I have Verizon and I've never had coverage issues. Actually, Stephanie, I know Verizon at one time. I don't know Verizon, to be honest with you. I don't know their cell phone plans now. I was on Verizon years ago. I remember when we used to travel to Mexico, they used to have this plan. Actually, I could turn it on and off for $10 extra. and it would roam in Mexico. I don't know if Verizon has, I mean, maybe you could shed some light on it for me, Stephanie, and actually help the community here, is if they charge extra for the roaming or if it's now included. Now, I do know when I was with Verizon, they were just switching over to GSM. They were on a different system, CDMA, and they switched over to GSM. So I think they probably have more options now. Uh, okay. I have Verizon. When I move to Mexico, they will limit or cut it off after 90 days unless I get an international uh, an international plan for $100 a month. Need something for two factors and authentication. Jim, what I would do, like I said, I got Cricket. I ported my number over to Cricket. It works fine on the AT&T network here. If I don't have AT&T service and I have Wi-Fi, I can make phone calls. I can receive text messages. I have had no problems with the two-factor authentication. As a matter of fact, I'll give you a perfect example. Today, my wife, her, we have both have Telcel plans on our phones, and so I had to pay her Telcel bill, and she got a text message saying, "By the way, we're going to cut you off if you don't pay." So I got online and I use and they take US debit. The app takes US debit or credit cards. I used my US debit card like I normally do, and I got my charge denied because I guess it was and I literally got a text message within 20 seconds saying, "Oh, did you make this charge on my Cricket number, on my US number?" I said, texted back, "Yes, I did." "Okay, wait a minute and reattempt reattempt it." And I did, and it works fine. I was able to pay. So that's just an example of the convenience. And I was here at the house on my Wi-Fi calling. So Lambden, you're watching the football game. You know what? I haven't been keeping up with the football, the latest football stuff. Stephanie, the plan we have includes Canada and Mexico. Okay. Uh, Now, the only thing you might want to check, Stephanie, is if you're going to be, and don't say you're going to live in Mexico, but just maybe get a hold of Verizon and say, "Hey, I'm going to be spending half the year in Mexico, or I'm back and forth a lot. Am I going to have any issues?" Because I do know that Verizon was, I think it was like $15 extra for the month if I wanted it and I'd have to call every single time. Um, but like I said, when I had Verizon, they were a totally different entity. They had a totally different, they had I guess it was called Verizon and Sprint were the last two that were on CDMA service. They weren't on GSM service. Now they've changed. So I don't know. You might want to check to see what that. AT&T, the reason why I go with AT&T and the reason why I'm almost sure AT&T doesn't cut you off is AT&T is the same company. Okay, so if you go to the U.S., if not the U.S., if you're in the U.S., you roam on AT&T. I mean, not that you roam, you use your AT&T, and if you come over here, AT&T is not paying another company for their roaming fees, or they don't have an agreement that you can roam on my towers for 15 hours if I can roam on your towers for 15 hours. There's no agreements. AT&T is AT&T. So when you walk into Mexico, you're basically have service with the same company. It's just a different subsidiary. Of course, AT&T Mexico is separate than AT&T United States, but it's still the same company overall. So AT&T doesn't have to work out roaming agreements with other companies. And that's why T-Mobile, I know for a fact, I'm not going to make any comments for Verizon because I don't know how they do it. And someone just made a comment that Verizon told them they have to be on a $100 international plan. Uh, I don't know if that's, I have no idea on Verizon, but that's why I stick with AT&T. Or if you get a prepaid service that uses AT&T, make sure. Bruno, so if I port my US number to Google Voice, will I be able to call 1-800 numbers and perform two-factor authentication? Here's the thing, Bruno. The problem with Google Voice, and here's the problem, receiving text messages and everything else, Google Voice makes you connect a phone to it. Okay. You don't have to. What I did, what I connected my US number to it, and then I just deleted it off the Google Voice. So to make phone calls, you actually need a US phone number connected to it. Now, it'll still make internet phone calls, but you have to have that US number, a US phone number, like a physical phone number connected to it. And it's supposed to use your whatchamacallit, phone, existing phone service. Um, so I don't use the Google Voice for a reason. And the reason being, and I do use it for two-factor authentication because I do have several video game companies that I have my account with, and they send a text message. And at the time, I used that number because it was a throwdown number. And so I do receive text. You will be able to do two-factor authentication and respond to text messages. Calling 1-800 numbers is a little bit of a what you can do, but your caller ID won't come out to that number or your number, because I do know that when you call some banks, if you call from your phone that's registered, the bank will recognize you. The other This is the other solution, is to get Skype and pay $3 a month, and you get in the application. You can dial any U.S. number, or I think it's regional. You can even dial Mexican numbers. The problem with Skype is you can't receive text messages. You can receive Skype to Skype messages, but Skype does not receive. And you can get a phone number with Skype too, and you can even, I think, port phone numbers. But the problem is the text messaging part. Now, if you get a service like Magic Jack, which is very inexpensive, I don't know how much it is, but they have a phone app where you can actually make phone calls with your data, using your data or Wi-Fi, and it allows you to receive text messages too. Vonage, I believe, also lets you do that, but you're looking at a monthly fee for that. And what I ended up having to do is weigh out, okay, am I going to, and here's the thing, I pay the same as I would have paid in the United States. With T-Mobile, I was paying more than I pay now. I pay $90 a month for the 2 lines and on Cricket, unlimited, highest speed, 5G, and I get those 2 lines, and then I pay $30 a month between my 2 Telcel phone bills. So I pay $105 a month. Okay. But in the United States, I was paying close to $130, $140. So you can kind of keep it close. And actually, I know my son pays $110 with AT&T. So it was probably the best bet. I asked TELUS about restrictions about keeping my Canadian number in Mexico full time, and they said I was good. Yeah, actually, Keith, I think TELUS and Rogers, I think, also will let you do that. I'm not sure, but I know some people that use, I think, Rogers. I want to say Rogers. I'm not too familiar with Canadian cell phone service, but I want to say Rogers also has a deal with Mexico and the United States that you can go into the United States and Mexico with no problem. I have to check with Verizon before we move. I do need to get a Mexican number while I'm there this time because I want to open a bank account. Cool. Like I said, Stephanie, as long as you have that SIM card slot, the only other option, the other 2 options for eSIMs are available. Or if you want to, I don't know how Verizon does it, but a lot of the U.S. carriers are now doing eSIMs right away. And so, as long as you have that physical SIM card slot, you can buy a prepaid Telcel card. And as long as you keep it charged, you can keep the number. And I don't know how long after, like if you don't pay it, how long you can keep the number. But it's really easy to recharge. You just go to the local OXXO and recharge it. And then if you're going to be here more permanently and you don't have that option of having a physical SIM card slot, or you need to, I don't know, your physical SIM card slot, you need to keep it in the, you need to keep your Verizon, I guess. Then you have to get either prepaid AT&T, which I think won't work in your area when you come here to San Miguel, or you're going to have to get postpaid. And here's the thing with the prepaid, with the eSIMs and AT&T, you have to buy a minimum of 1 year service. Or you get postpaid. If you have residency and everything else, you can open up a postpaid account. The only thing is you have to make sure you keep paying it, and it's more of a hassle. But I mean, I live here, so I deal with it just like I have to pay any other. Okay, Jim, from what I'm understanding is if I get an AT&T plan in the US and an additional SIM for AT&T in Mexico, I would be better off than with Verizon. Probably, Jim. Um, you'll probably be better off. I don't know how and here's the thing too, Jim. What I did was I got Cricket. It's AT&T. It's owned by AT&T. It's AT&T. I mean, you're using AT&T towers in the United States. If you don't plan on being in the United States, which I don't, I'm not in the United. Like I'm gonna go maybe in, I think in March. I'm gonna be there for 3 days. Okay, so and then I'm going to be in San Antonio, which is a lot bigger, has a lot more towers. So I'm not going to suffer in San Antonio. I would suffer in McAllen, Texas, but I'm not going to suffer in San Antonio. And what I do, I'll be honest with you, I just switch over to Telcel. I roam on Telcel when I'm in the United States. Believe it or not, I actually roam on Telcel because I get better. It roams on T-Mobile towers, so I get better reception there. So you probably be good. What I would do, Jim, if you're going to go with that strategy of getting an AT&T plan in the United States, I would probably go with a Telcel plan like I did here, so that where you don't get AT&T, you can switch it over to Telcel. Whenever you get AT&T, you switch it back, depending on what kind of phone you have, Jim. So. Yes, for me, it's about the two-factor authentication for my bank and investment bank as well. And that's the thing, Jim. The reason why I went with versus now Google, I can still get. I have the app, so I still get a notification in the text messages. If someone sends me a text message on my Google Voice, but what I like about AT&T is I'm connected straight to that. And like I said, a perfect example. Well, I was at my house, but let's say I was at, I don't know, I was out and about and I was trying to pay my wife's bill. I also have US credit card. Many times I go to pay with the US credit card, boom, declined. And then I get the quick, hey, was that you? Yes, it was me. Okay, on my phone. And then I'm up and running again. The problem that you have with some of these services, for example, with Google Voice and some of that stuff, is that you're relying on an application, and maybe that text message isn't going to come by through as fast. So that's why I have it. Okay, Rogers is offering it as well, but you went with TELUS. Okay. Well, like I said, got more data. I've been with them for 15 years. Perfect. And great to know, Keith. Thanks for letting us know about Rogers because, like I said, I don't know anything about Mexico. I mean, not Mexico, Canada. Oh, and I don't know anything about Mexico. Well, I know a little bit about Mexico, but I digress. I can say I don't know everything about Mexico because I always say I'm not an expert. Okay. Okay. Jim, Gina's in the same boat with you. We kept the USA AT&T and she added Telcel here for Mexico. hmm So basically, it's the same thing. Uh, Jim, Telcel does has eSIM. Uh, and if you have an iPhone 16 already, here's the thing with the eSIM. Make sure it's unlocked. If you're with AT&T, make sure they unlock it that you can use your eSIM. Second thing is with Telcel, when you come to live here, if you use Telcel, you have to get a postpaid plan. In other words, you have to sign a contract. You have to give them your residency card, and all of that stuff. It's a bigger process. You just don't go to OXXO and buy a card. Now, here's the thing with AT&T. you just go to an AT&T store. If that's not an option for you, you only have eSIMs, then maybe AT&T for your Mexican numbers. Okay. You'll be buying the phone from Apple, so it'll be unlocked. But you're going to have two eSIMs. So here's your option: you either go with paying $100 for a year of service or $150 for a year of service on AT&T and get an AT&T eSIM, and keep your AT&T plan from the United States, or have an AT&T plan from the United States, or you sign up with a postpaid plan. And here's a postpaid plan. You actually sign up, I think, for a year agreement. Actually, on the postpaid plan, they actually give you 5 gigabytes extra for a year. And then after that, you don't get any extra gigabytes. But you actually pay that month to month. It's a month to month thing. It's not prepaid. And it's not like the SIM card where, oh, I don't need data for these next 3 days, and you just pay as you go. So those are your two questions that you need to ask. And also, well, you said you'll be buying it directly from Apple, so it'll be unlocked. Here's the other option, Jim, is buying it directly from Apple here in Mexico. I have an iPhone 16 Pro Max. I bought it here. And I did take the hit on it being a little bit more expensive. Now, I was able to sell my iPhone 13 for more than I would have been able to trade it into Apple. So I kind of evened out between the sale of my iPhone 13 and Pro Max and buying this one. I wasn't too far off from the US price, but it's still, you're going to pay $100 or $200 more, $300 more. Now, the Mexican iPhone 16, if you get it from Apple Mexico, will buy, and you'll be buying the phone in the US, will give you a physical SIM card slot. But the ones in the US only have eSIMs. So that's one of the things. Actually, I almost bought an iPhone in the US because both of my phone numbers are on eSIMs, which is not a big deal. I just transferred them over when I uploaded my iPhone. And I was going to get one in the US because the US has this really great thing where you can finance it for 2 years. But the problem with Apple now with the Apple Card is, unless you have a US carrier, they're no longer letting you finance the phone. So I just went and bit the bullet and bought it in cash. And I also bit the bullet saying, you know what, if I'm going to buy it in cash, I'm going to pay the extra $200 premium. Well, it was a little bit less with the sale of my phone, but I'm going to pay the extra $200 or $300 premium so that I can have a physical SIM card slot. But that's just me. I mean, $200 or $300 is a lot of money. So I'm not advising people to go out and buy it. That was my solution. I'm not here to say it's the better solution or anything else. It's just that for the sake of convenience, that's what I'm going to do. I'm going to take the hit for that. And there wasn't, other than it. And then the other thing too is logistics. I would have had to go back to the US, trade in my phone. Normally I go to McAllen, Texas. That would have been, they don't have an Apple store down there. So my logistics in getting the phone here would have been hard. So, good question. We are Samsung customers, and Gina is back in the US for a new job. I know that she has one on physical and one on eSIM. And actually, Gringos R Us, I had a Note Trendy Ultra, and that's what I didn't have the eSIM set up, but it had eSIMs and a physical SIM card slot. So, and I just finished telling you, Jim, that you can get an eSIM, but that's the only catch in Telcel. I don't know. Telcel may change that, but I think it's a structure, the prepaid service. Because here's the other thing about AT&T: when your year is up, you have to go back in the AT&T store and get a new eSIM with the following year's worth of service. So in other words, you can't just keep the service going, or, okay, I want another year. Actually, I did do the eSIM with AT&T when they were first, because I had the Cricket phone before Cricket wasn't doing eSIMs, and I had the Cricket in my physical SIM card slot. So when I was in Monterrey, I did do the AT&T prepaid plan for a year. I actually ported my number over to Telcel, but I did do it for a year. And that's one of the things they told me at the end of the year. What I did was I waited because I had already paid for my cell phone service. And at the end of the year, what I did do is they said, oh, well, they kept sending me text messages. Oh, get more, sign up for another year. But what they told me at the store is, no, that won't work. You have to come in and get it reprogrammed. Let's see. For USA number, it was a real pain. AT&T Mexico is great about helping for the Mexican number, but useless on the the useless for, yeah, they are for the US number. You also remember, because I am saying AT&T, it's the same company. They're different companies in a sense. One's AT&T Mexico, and for example, BBVA. There's BBVA in the United States and BBVA Mexico. They're both associated. They're both under the big umbrella of BBVA. And yes, there are some services where you can transfer money from BBVA US to BBVA Mexico at reduced rates, but they're totally two separate banks. It's the same thing. These are two totally separate cell phone companies, but under the umbrella. It's the same thing. Banamex is a part of Citibank. HSBC has banks here. But what a lot of people have had problems with is, oh, but I have a Citibank account. How come it doesn't transfer over here? Well, it's because they're totally two different banks. Yes, it's Banamex, it's owned by Citibank, but it's Citibank, and there's different regulations and different stuff that they have to abide by. So they're totally two different. So AT&T Mexico and AT&T US are two different entities. The great thing is because AT&T is owned by on both sides, the roaming is not as expensive for the company. They're roaming to themselves. Okay, so in the greater picture, you'll choose AT&T when you purchase. So the U.S. number is set up here. Then when I get to Querétaro, I'll set up AT&T number there. Yeah, and all you have to do, Jim, it's an easy process. They will take your information. You have to give them your residency card, but that's all I had to give them, and I just paid up front for a year. And the cool thing about AT&T prepaid and the eSIM is you don't have to worry about paying a monthly bill for a whole year. That's the thing. That's the catch with Telcel. I'm putting up with some inconvenience in order to have some convenience. I have to pay it every month. I have to remember. I have to get into the app. Yes, Santander US and Santander MX are different. And actually, if you go to Santander in the United States and you say, "Oh, can I do or can I use my account in the United States here in Mexico?" They'll tell you, "No, we're totally two different." Now they're owned by the same corporation. They may have some services where you can transfer money from your U.S. account to the Mexican account, but for example, I'll give you BBVA. We had a BBVA account. I don't bank with BBVA in the United States, but I decided let's try it because we have an account in Mexico. The only the only benefit that I got was if I wanted to transfer money from my BBVA checking account to my BBVA checking account here or account here in Mexico, I got a better exchange rate. And the amount for wire transfer was, or not wire transfer, but for the transfer was cheaper because it was going to the same bank, and they were, no, it was more like an ACH transfer than a wire transfer. And I do know that BBVA was offering some of their, at one time, not anymore. From what I understand, they were saying that their customers could get mortgages at one point in Mexico. But that's no longer the case. They don't do mortgages in Mexico anymore. But that was one of the only advantage to having the same bank over there as I did over here. Um, but you're going to find that it's totally different. Let's see where we're at. We're at an hour. So I guess I'm going to go. I hope I explained everything pretty decently about cell phone service. I know that that's one of the big issues that people are having. The next week, what I'm going to try to discuss is possibly banking. I've done some videos on banking, but I'm going to do a live on why you might want a U.S. bank account. The other thing that I'm seeing a lot on expat groups is issues with Intercam. Intercam is kind of a different animal, and people need to understand the differences of Intercam versus a regular Mexican bank. So, and then the other thing that I need to do, yes, and somebody just reminded me, we were on WhatsApp today. What we need is if you are planning, and Gringos Are Us is coming, we have a couple of YouTubers coming, several YouTubers. We have a special guest coming, uh, a surprise guest that will be coming to the 25th. It's January 25th. And what we need for you to do is if you want to come here to San Miguel de Allende and meet with all of us, with Gringos or Us, myself, we're going to have a meet and greet. And there's going to be several YouTube creators that you can pick their brains. Uh, all these, and actually, I'm going to tell you right now, the YouTube creators that will be coming are from all over. So if you want to ask questions about, I don't know, Ajijic, you're going to have somebody that will be able to answer your questions about Ajijic. And I think our special guest is going to be able to answer a lot of questions about moving to Mexico. So if you want to come, and you are planning to come because we're trying to do logistics. I need to find out how many people are coming so that we can make reservations at places to have meetings and all of that stuff. So if you are planning to come, please email me, or if you, for example, you follow Gringos or Us and they're also in this, send myself, Gringos or Us, and several of the other, and we're going to put together a flyer with all the different YouTube channels. And what we'll do is we'll put together a spreadsheet. We'll put together a contact list so that you can get emails. And I want to try to get to a hotel where everybody could stay, maybe get some good rates or actually block off some rooms. But I need to know as soon as possible. But if you can RSVP, just send me an email, send Gringos or Us an email, or any of your other content creators that are going to be here, send them an email or send me one, info at retiredlifeandmexiconobull.com. That's right, info at retiredlifeandmexiconobull.com. That's my address. That way I can if you could send an email with an RSVP, yes, I'm going. This is my cell phone number, contact number, and an email address. If you could send that to me or send that to Gringos or Us or any of the other content creators that are going to be here in January. We have a lot of them that are coming. It looks like we're going to have a decent turnout of content creators. And so if you want to come or you're planning to come, please, and I will be placing maybe an announcement. We were talking about putting together a flyer and everything else, putting together maybe a flyer in the community announcement on how to RSVP, just in case you missed it today. But if you are, please let me know, because we really do need to know more or less how many people, because if I go to a restaurant and say, we're going to have 50 people here and only 5 people show up, we're going to have issues. And I think, yeah, it's 9. It's 9 creators, if I'm not mistaken. Actually, the 9th one was the one that's not sure if she can make it. But we'll also put the list of all the creators that are going to be here, all the YouTube channels, and we'd like for you to come. And it's going to be in San Miguel de Allende. I have a little hotel with 14 or 15 rooms that may, depending if they have the availability, but I need to find out how many people are going. And we need to do this before December, because that way I have enough time to get with the owners of these different places. Late comer to the live. Sorry, Fred. I'm going to be cutting it off by now. But like I said, I explained this. Hopefully, I explained the cell phone coverage well enough, and anybody who's watching this later, and darn, well, Fred, the next week we're going to be discussing possibly banking, or I'm going to be discussing immigration, what to expect in 2025, what my feelings are in respecting to 2025. I want to go back to the, what do you call it? The subject stuff, because, like I said, last week we got into this. I got totally off track with Trump, and then someone started arguing that the U.S. was number one and Trump was going to destroy Mexico. I'm being a little bit facetious, but that, and I I don't like getting into those conversations, and the reason why I don't like getting into them is because we don't know. Like I said, nothing's official till it's official. Trump can say anything that he wants to say, but until he does it, then there's really no reason to worry. And I'm saying worry when it happens, because sometimes we end up stressing out. And this is what living in Mexico is, what living in Mexico is all about. Living in Mexico stress free. Live a life of being stress free. And the last thing oh, thank God I already got my residence. And one of the things, as a matter of fact, one of the perfect example of somebody, an expat or a person that lives here in San Miguel told us before the election, we refused to watch any YouTube, TV, news, or anything about the election. All they knew is who got elected, and they refused to watch any news, any YouTube, anything that has to do with any of the politics. And they literally shut themselves away from that. Uh, Fred, the next live cast is going to be next Sunday at 7 p.m. Unless I have some personal stuff that I need to do, but that's where I mostly do it is Sundays at 7 p.m. I also announce it the same day on my Retired Life in Mexico No Bull Facebook page. We have a private group. You can also see it there. I will announce it. And also any previous lives, I also post a link. You can go back if you don't want to go to the page. So basically, it's a great piece of advice because they were like, I just don't want to hear anything about it because I'm living here stress free. And so, like I said, worry about it when it's time to worry about it. But right now, I'm going to try to stick to subjects so that we don't get totally off the wind. I do know the problem. The problem is also that I do know that there's a lot of concerns. But like I said, let's not be concerned until we need to be concerned. So thank you very much for joining me. Thank you, Blaine. Thank you, Lambden, Keith, all you guys. Thank you for your support. I really love this. We get up to 35 people in here. That's a perfect amount of people. It's not like 100 and 200 people bombing with questions. We get enough to time and enough people in here to be able to answer people's questions. If you have any questions, you can always reach out to me through that email. If I can answer it on the live, I'll answer it on the live. If I can answer it via email, it's really hard for me to get back to people on email. I get a lot of emails every day for different things. So sometimes I'll even have an intention of writing back to somebody and I just can't. Or I'll write them back later and oh shoot, I forgot to write them back a week later. But because I have such an influx of email coming in. But what I do, and it's a lot easier for me if you have a lot of questions. I had one individual that emailed me and says, hey, I have no idea. I want to move to Mexico. I don't know where to go. So I said, hey, you know what? I'll do a free consultation. Let me send you a link to my scheduling calendar. You can schedule a free consultation. It's totally free. It's an hour. And I can ask you questions. What exactly do you like? What exactly do you like? All sorts of different things. So what kind of climate do you like? That way I could give you a better idea of where to go. Because I could tell you San Miguel de Allende is the best place. It's the best place for me. But San Miguel de Allende is not the best place for everybody. So like I said, although I'm always available, just less available sometimes than other times. But if you have any questions or if you have something that might be a good topic to discuss, I'm willing to do a whole live stream and discuss the topic because especially if it's a topic that a lot of people ask. Cell phones was something that I see almost every week a post about cell phones. I see every week a post about bank accounts. I see every week different different little caveat things that, and the worst part of it on Facebook is every time I see that, I see these people being really mean. Like, no, you can't do that. No, blah, 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 blah. There's no reason to be mean. I mean, yes, maybe no, you can't do that, but you don't have to be rude about it. I mean, even to the point now that I think I saw a post now, it went from no, you can't do that to oh, I think it was on a group called expat something. It went from that to expat's a dirty word, and I'm like, what does that have to do with the question that they asked in the first place? The other question that I see a lot of from Americans are, can I have a gun in Mexico? And what will happen if I shoot somebody at my house, or if I have a shotgun in the house, I shoot somebody? I will cover that. That's something that I see a lot of Americans. The short answer is yes, you can, but it's almost impossible to do. There's only one gun store. You're limited to the caliber that you're able to own. And the other thing here in Mexico is if you shoot somebody, doesn't matter where it is, they'll put you in jail right away. Yes, you can use a self-defense, but it's not like in the United States where he came into my house and I shot him. So therefore, like in Texas, you shoot somebody coming into your house, you pretty much are immune from prosecution. It's not the way it works here. You automatically get charged with murder here. So, and then you have to prove that it was in self-defense. So it's a little bit different. So I'll go over that. But that's a common question. I want to go over those common questions so that you guys could have a better understanding. Oh, okay. Oh, LL, this is a good one. Uh, I'll do this for one of the next sessions, actually, because I have two puppies. I'm not puppies, but girls. They're adults. Two mini huskies, and this is something that we have experienced here, and I should go over that. It's about veterinary pets, veterinary experience. Um, I will. And actually, LL, veterinary care is really good here, depending where you go. I found, and it's also very not okay, inexpensive in the sense of compared to the United States, it's inexpensive. But I mean, fur babies, as you know, can get expensive, regardless of where you are, between food and everything else, and their spa and everything else. But we've had some very good experiences with veterinary care here. As a matter of fact, veterinary care, I would even equate it to the medical care, private medical care here. It's very good. The doctors give you their WhatsApp number. Uh, some veterinarians will come to your house and do house calls. So I will definitely get into that. Yes, they make house calls, and some doctors make house calls too. Um, so uh, you're going to have some very good veterinary care here. And I will go into that. And actually, LL, I'll also go into the regulations on bringing them in to Mexico and also the regulations of going back to the United States with your dog because it's changed. You have to actually fill out a form now. So half the ports of entry aren't doing anything, and the other half or quarter are doing it. So you still have to. There's a couple of hoops you have to go through in order to get take your pet back to the United States. So healthcare in Mexico seems so much more reasonable, logical than in the States. It is, Lambden. And I can even go over that. I have touched on healthcare a lot in my videos, but I can give you personal experiences. Actually, I'm going to go to the cardiologist this week, and I can give you an idea how much certain tests cost. I'm going to do a stress test. And I know that when I did a stress test in the US, they wanted a $1,500 deposit. And I don't know how much the stress test came after they charged my insurance, but they wanted a $1,500 deposit. And I guarantee you the stress tests that I do here is a lot less than $1,500. So I'll leave it at that. Like I told you guys, I always go over my hour. I try to keep it to an hour, but we keep going and going, which is a good thing because that way you guys can get more information. I just try to keep it short. Why do I try to keep it short? Well, not short. It's still an hour and 25 minutes, but I try to keep it as short as possible because I do know that people aren't able to show up and they also want to be able to uh, check out the different. They might want to know about cell phones, but they don't want to listen to it for an hour and a half. So hopefully, and what I might do in my lives, well, I don't know if I can do it, but may try to put bookmarks. But I don't know. I tried to figure it out, but so that people can go straight to what I was discussing if I'm discussing an eSIM or whatever. Um, so I'll leave it at that. Thank you guys for joining me. We'll see you next Sunday. Um, I'm still in the mode. I probably won't start doing videos till the beginning of next year. I will be traveling a lot. Uh, so I will be traveling a lot. So I'm not sure how much videos I'll be able to get out, but I will try to keep going with my Sunday stuff. Even when I travel, I did it from Merida. I have a mobile setup that I'm able to do live streaming now. So we'll try to keep it. Uh, we'll try to keep it every week, and that way I can get you information regardless. So we'll see you soon. And like I said, okay, great, Fred. We'll see you next month, and I mean not next month, next week, Fred. And that way you'll know and now with the Facebook request, you'll know when I actually do it because sometimes I do have to reschedule it, and the best place to find it is on Facebook. And I also through my Discord server, I have an actual room that anytime a new video comes out or anytime any of my lives get scheduled, it automatically sends it to the Discord server. Um, there's not a lot of activity on Discord, but it's a messaging. It's like WhatsApp. If you have a question that you need right away, that's the easiest way to get a hold of me because I get the message right then and there. Um, and also, I do have the feed. I did have some news feeds, but it's not working anymore. Um, from of Mexico news in English, but it's not really working anymore. But my videos do come out. Maybe worth just downloading the app, signing up for an account, joining the Discord server, and that way you can get notified. And if you really need to get a hold of me, that's also a way to do it. I usually get the messages and I can respond like if it's a text message, if I can at the time. So until next time, like I always say, stay safe and most importantly, stay informed.